Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, no matter where you are in the world. Welcome to this episode of the SOS Show. SOS stands for Strategy Over Spaghetti. And this is a show in which we look at strategies that help you write your book or write your anything you're working on. It could be an essay, it could be something else. So if you're catching the replay for this later, please type replay below so I know that you were able to watch it. And if you have any questions or you want to chime into the conversation, please feel free in the comments. I love to go back later and see what people wrote and what they've been thinking about. So we're talking today about how to clarify your big idea in your book. And I'm calling it figure outable, how to clarify your big idea. So not long ago, a client came to me because they were struggling with getting their book written. And this is someone who can write. It wasn't a matter of not being able to write. It was a matter of gaining that clarity. And that's actually why, in conjunction with someone who helped me come up with this, I came up with the three-step process of clarifying your idea and so on, and then storify, which is where we write, we figure out the stories that are going to teach what we're trying to communicate to other people, and then amplify, which is getting that writing out there, whether it's an article, a book, or something else. So clarify, storify, and amplify, that is the general process. So getting back to this client, they had a lot of writing done. It wasn't in the voice that they wanted it to be in. I work with a fair number of lawyers, academics, and so on. And these folks tell me that they've been trained to write in a certain way. And that was the case with this client. They had to write in a certain way, and they felt like, hey, this writing, it got the point across in the academic world, but now I need it to, have more of what is going to work in a book and making a book a page turner. So they sought me out to help them clarify their outline, and joined one of my one-on-one book outline retreats in order to get that done. So in that retreat, in that one-on-one retreat, we have a highly collaborative process, and by that I mean this. And I'll kind of show you some of the back and forth that happens inside this process, because you might be able to do this and use it for your own writing projects too. But for instance, they came to me with an idea for a structure, really cool structure, by the way. Then I had an idea under that general narrative structure they had. I had an idea for the structure of the different chapters, with some ideas about how to open them, with some ideas about how to help the readers learn and use the information. And excuse me, and then they had stories to illustrate the points, which is great. And then I brought in some background information and ideas on how to use comparison between one thing and another thing in order to make the content more clear for this author's readers. So the collaboration goes back and forth like that. Lots of questions are involved, lots of conversation. And in the end, at the end of our work together, they had a book outline they could use that told them exactly what they needed to include in the book. Now, are there ever changes from the book outline? Do people ever deviate a little bit? Yes, and that's totally normal. But what they had was basically a book map that told them exactly what needed to be written, exactly what needed to be included, and so on, and every single story that would be included in their book. And that is how you create a page turner book that people find compelling to read. But how do we even get there in the first place, right? So with clients, I share a comprehensive questionnaire as the very first step. It goes deep. And they spend some time on it. It does take some time in order to do this work well. So these go together, the in-person work as well as the questionnaire, they go together to provide that full experience to get the book outline done. And what I found over years of doing this is that each author requires a tailored experience and unique questions. So I'm going to share some of those with you. And my first bit of advice regarding this, or tip, is to start with the questions. So if you're looking to do this for yourself and you want to work on outlining your book, start with the questions. Just asking your brain a question can bring forth insights, ideas, etc. It's almost like putting in an order for anything, whether it's filet mignon or French fries. You have to start with a question. May I have? Right? So it's no different with our brains. If we put in the order to our brain for it to work on something, it's going to go work on something, even if we're making dinner or going for a run or something like that. So the first question for you guys to consider asking, this is the one I would recommend you start with if you're working on this by yourself, is what questions do you need to ask? That would be the first question. So what are some of the questions that people have for you? What are some of the questions that you think need to be answered in your material? And then start with that question. So make a list of any of the questions that come to mind, and that is going to help you when it comes time to creating your outline for your writing. So another question that can be really useful is, what does your audience need to know? Now, it sounds simple on the surface, but I'm going to explain why this question is not as simple as it seems. So first of all, if you're thinking about writing a book and you're, say, an executive coach, a career coach, a consultant, someone who's been in the business world a while, you're a speaker, a trainer, you're probably an expert on your topic, right? So it's important to have, or to return back to a beginner's mind, to that first time you encountered your subject. Now, some of my clients are writing about their families, they write memoir. So that would mean just figuring out what it is your audience needs to know. Also thinking about, what questions do you have about the topic, or if you're writing memoir, about the experience? What would need to be answered for people? What would they need to know about that? And if you're working on something that's less memoir and more like a how-to prescriptive nonfiction or something like that, then think through, like, what did you need to have defined when you first started learning more about your subject? Now, the reason why this could be tricky and it's deeper than that first question I shared is because you also need to think about, will your audience need certain things defined in the first place? Because audiences and readers are always changing. We're becoming more sophisticated. Your readers might not need certain terms explained to them, but they might have needed them explained to them 5 years ago, right? Because people are learning all the time. So this is something I just wanted to share with you, is that most people don't pay attention to this when they're writing a book, and it's much to their detriment, because when they don't pay attention to what I'm about to tell you, they end up going in circles, they end up writing material they don't need, et cetera, et cetera. So thinking through, let me use Zoom as an example. So 3 years ago, a lot of people didn't use Zoom, or, let's say back in 2018, 2019, maybe a lot of people didn't know what Zoom was. There were a fair amount of people who did, but when the pandemic came to being in March 2020, many more people hopped onto Zoom and sort of had to learn about it in order to participate in meetings, to go to, to have Zoom lunch with their friends, to go to networking events, to hear people speak on different topics. Conferences moved online and so on. So Zoom became much better known. So maybe in 2018, you would have to explain a concept like Zoom, but by 2021, nobody really needed that explained anymore. So that's just one small example of how a culture, a market, a group of people can become more sophisticated, more knowledgeable about something, and then there's elements that might not need to be described. You can take that same idea and apply it to your book. What is it that doesn't need to be described? And so that's why getting really clear about your reader is so important. And you'll know why. That might also give you a hint why in my process, clarify, storify, amplify, clarify comes first, because part of it is clarifying these questions. The other part is also clarifying your audience and some other elements. So when I do the VIP book outline retreats with my one-on-one clients, a lot of my questions are personalized for them to take into account the author's audience, the author's subject, the author, like what the author is trying to accomplish in their personal or business mission. So my questions are very tailored to them. And those questions affect the book that we create, like the type of book we create. Is it going to be a memoir and essays? Is it going to be a how-to prescriptive book? This is all informing what their final choice is for the kind of book they're going to create. It also affects the length of the book. How long should the book be? 60 pages, 100 pages, 150? The questions and what we find out from those answers is going to affect that as well. And it will also affect the topics that we choose to cover, that we choose to include in the outline. So everything is affected by the questions, which are affected by the ideal reader and the audience. So that's kind of how it all connects together. So I wanted to let you know, every month I offer a free author's lab. It's every month, the third Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern. It would be awesome to see you there. It's interactive. I do something a little different every month to keep it fresh, but usually I share a writing resource, writing tips. We might have a short exercise. You don't need to share your writing with anyone. It's totally low pressure, and you don't need to have anything planned in advance. It's free, interactive, 60 minutes, and it's there for us to explore ideas, experiment, test things out. And that's really the main thing, and also grow community. So those are sort of the main goals for it, and it would be great to see you there. So again, every third Wednesday of the month at 11 a.m. 11 a.m. Eastern. And I hope to see you at one of those in the future. All right, you take good care. And if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the comments, or like I mentioned before, just type replay and just let me know that you were there. All right, bye-bye.